SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeep.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity. What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sword of blade.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. And the GOAT was included today.
It was.
We got that.
We're
figured.
doing stuff.
We're doing stuff. My name is Neil with SFJ 4x4 Simpson Family Jeeps.
And he's sure of that.
Yeah, I am, and I'm sure of the production value of the podcast, despite the fact that Jeffrey has once again bailed on us. I don't hold it against him. He's a very busy dude as well these days.
Yep.
I'm joined in Grandma's couch studio.
Even though Mother Nature tried to blow us away last night
Yeah, yeah,
by this mad scientist,
yes,
Scott Brown.
and trying to source vintage driveline parts and help paint and color vintage driveline.
It's already being a Monday.
It is such a Monday. It's a Monday-est Monday. But we had the GOAT, and we started on time, despite the fact that Nathan is saying we didn't. Jump to our comments. Nathan is saying Carpe Diem. I'm here to DM all the Carpe the Diem. Billy Joe, good morning. Rob, happy Monday or something. He had a very busy weekend with the Bantam Trail individuals. Jeannie saying good morning, happy to be here. Bradford has a word on the comments, folks. Us would got to something canoe ride. I got no idea what Bradford's talking about. I got to be honest with you. Not only can I not pronounce a lick of the word that he's mentioning, I don't even know what he's talking about. Canoe rides in the middle of.
Yeah, we're good with Jeeps, not with other languages.
Right now, the Midwest, the authentic Midwest, is about to prepare for 24 plus inches of snow. Mm-hmm. We're going to get a slushing. And Bradford's talking about canoeing. I don't know. Giaga Cheapers, good morning, everyone. Nathan trying to claim we're late. Not true at all. I started exactly at 10:19. Mm-hmm. Joe, good morning. Mitch, good morning. And Rob saying good morning, Neil and Scott. And Jeannie saying she's a Jeep person, she's enjoying watching you build your car on your social page.
Well,
so
I appreciate that.
And as always, we encourage people to jump on one or both of our social pages depending on your interests. And Bradford is talking about a river in New York, which, I mean, it sounds great because there's a lot of Native American. It's funny, as I deal, let me just throw my mic into my face.
Absolutely.
As we deal with so many vendors from, the West Coast, the East Coast, and north to south, everybody's always kind of blown away at our Native American inspired words, which, of course, from folks who are from this area, we don't think anything of it, and
they're just normal words to us.
They're just normal words to us, right?
But you go into New York, there's some really crazy ones.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And that's 100% the case, because I'm telling you this. I'm going to spell it for people who are at home. I'm going to spell it because I feel like you need to participate with me, and I feel like somebody should like phonetically have this. So Bradford's talking about a river, WWEGATCGIE. There was entirely too many vowels next to consonants and consonants next to vowels, or consonants next to consonants.
With that said, I do enjoy when you're talking to someone out of the area and they try to say Conneaut, and you hear Canute. All kinds of weird stuff comes out of their mouths.
Without question. And John Graber's jumping in. He's saying, enjoy the winter. and he's down off-roading in the Southwest last I knew, and high of 106 on Thursday.
Wow.
And he said, enjoy it. And Mitch says, well, we happen to get 36 inches of snow. He's upstate Michigan there, which is, they're talking about 2 to 4 feet for some areas. Wow. Just wow for everybody. And I know we have a demographic in Florida who are just laughing their heinies off at us right now while they bask in their 80-degree weather, which would be lovely. I hear that harassment. Anywho, folks, we're going to be talking about fording, which may or may not be appropriate with the melt of the snow in the north.
Yeah.
But coming wheeling season in general. As always, Scott will jump us off with some of the vintage-inspired stuff. We'll see how he relates this back. If he doesn't relate as far back enough, I certainly have some, some conversation there. And then if you're interested to know what's happening in our personal lives, hang out through the outro credit scene, and we'll tell you about our weekend updates and, other shenanigans in the process. So where were you going to start us on fording and maybe the inspiration of conversation here?
Well, I would let everyone down if I didn't go back far enough. So you had to make sure your horse was liking water.
Oh my God.
And then you shouldn't go past the head of the horse. Obviously.
No, they swim. Horses swim.
Well, it depends on how fat the guy is on the back.
You're telling me my horse sinks, that is what we're saying.
No, I think you're doing pretty good, honestly.
Okay.
So anyways, moving up from the horse, we went to, I could do, Model Ts and all that kind of stuff. I'm not. I'm going to do right to MBs. Which they're saying about 21 inches is when you're maxed out.
When did an MB come out for those of our Jeep owners who are newer listeners?
41.
Okay.
So
we're in the 40s.
World War II. And where water started to get in places it should not get is 21 inches.
Which is really not much of anything.
No.
But...
And really, I'll be here to say that is the crappiest water fording depth Jeep has ever had.
Yes.
Just to set the benchmark. So next one that
we had duck boats at the time, though.
We did.
So you had
they float.
You had amphibious vehicles, which was an amazing industrial time globally because there was this attempt to have these tanks that swam.
Well, and they did have
then,
the Ford version of the Jeep, the GPA, which was general purpose amphibious. And that was a small boat with a Jeep inside of it. But I don't think that's really fording because it's a boat. It's floating on the water.
But I think that's...
You're cheating.
Right. But I think that because they didn't have the technology or I don't want to say they didn't have the forethought because I'm always amazed at how incredible those engineers, how incredible those inventors must have been at the time. But because of a kind of a different approach, they thought they should float on the water versus drive through it.
Yes, 100%. And I think too, we just overbuilt everything. So you just expected to kind of be real conservative on what your recommendation was, knowing everyone was going to push the envelope well past.
Sure.
And just really go crazy. So, next one I worried about was the M38. That's kind of the coup de grace of the flat fender. And that is 30 inches, which you'll see a trend here from there on in. But the fun one is with the fording kit. So we had done stuff in World War II enough that someone was like, hey, the next military Jeep needs to be like serious.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not in scuba gear in my Jeep, am I really fording?
Okay, but I think, and this is completely arbitrary, I think it's because we had this expectation we were going to float. And then we realized that maybe floating wasn't particularly effective.
Yes.
Right? Because Pioneer days, we attempted to float the wagons. They would, literally go to your horse and buggy conversation. They would point or putty the wagons so that they could float the wagons. But the problem with that, of course, is a cross current.
Yes.
And
you're not where you were anymore.
No, you're not. You're not going from point A to point B down the river. You had to figure out how to drift with the river because
trig. You had to use trig to figure out where you were going.
Use trigonometry. Stop it. And I
definitely know those guys out in the western.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were doing.
Using trig.
That's exactly what they were doing. But they were trying to float all the time, and I again, dying on my hill to cross regarding how we as humans approach solving situations. That's what we knew. We knew floating. And then floating wasn't working because these big, heavy military equipment wasn't floating very well.
Yes. Especially when you get a couple holes in them from enemies.
From enemies. We're no longer floating this. Or the duck boats. And I got to say... David Geauga Jeepers was like, wait a second. So they put a Jeep on a duck.
It was a tiny duck.
Tiny, yeah. Well, it was a big boat, but there is something
compared
to
an actual duck, which those that don't know, the duck was a large, like ton or bigger vehicle. Had 6-wheel. No, 2 in the back, 2 axles in the back, 1 in the front. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 6.
Oh boy,
6-wheel drive.
We're counting.
Had to get my toes out to do that. Anyway, you could have put the GPA in that vehicle.
Yes, you could have.
I mean, they're humongous.
Yes.
I've been lucky enough to actually been on one of those, not in the water, but in a garage. And it is amazing. Now, the GPA, they weren't very common. Mm-hmm. Maybe the floating problem. I don't know.
Well, there was a bunch of amphibious approaches in that era, right? And they were not super successful. And to my knowledge, and of course I don't. Oh man, I read something not too long ago, but Pittsburgh had a prolific duck boat tour. There was actually a number of cities that, as a business model, they got a surplus of ducks. Yeah. And it was super cool. I always wanted to do it, but it's kind of an expensive, for 2 hours, it was like $40 or $50.
And these are not the landing craft that everyone talks about with D-Day either. That is yet something else.
Yeah. I'm with you. Okay. So let me stop sidetracking.
From that quick sidebar. So anyway.
So now we need to actually sink the Jeep.
So we're 7 years in, from 41 to 48 is when the M38 came out. We decided that we should do better, and now we can go to 74 inches.
That is 6 foot 2 inches.
Yeah,
underwater.
That's
folks.
With the deep water fording kit, and that was only because we had gone. Everybody likes to do one extreme to the other. We had 6-volt crappy ignition, didn't like water. All the way to the M38, we have special spark plugs that are screwed. The leads are screwed on. Mm-hmm. So it had a waterproof ignition. It had little diagrams of where you put plugs before you went fording deep in the water and where you didn't.
Mm-hmm. It was actually in like a user manual or a military factory service manual.
And when you got people that don't pay attention, you got to have stickers. So there's literally stickers on the dash that says, you make sure you put these plugs in, and when you remove them, put them here and that kind of stuff. So they were serious. They went all in.
I mean,
the exhaust went up. The intake had a big riser. The vent tubes were metal reinforced rubber tubes. Yeah. The master cylinder, the brake master cylinder, had a breather on it. I mean, they really went off the rails.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to know how reliable this all was, because I doubt it. But anyway,
I would love to know, and in what capacity, because at that point in time, I mean, to just fully iterate, when you are sitting in a Jeep that was previously, I mean, the prior version of this was able to go to 21 inches.
Yes.
And a kind of a generic rule was basically to the rocker or to the height of the
and they still
3/4 of the tire.
Still use that basically to the rockers. When water starts to come in the Jeep, you're gonna have a bad time. Is general consensus,
right?
No matter what model.
But basically, I mean, it's my understanding that is as a generic rule, and this is, a bit of my experience growing up and whatnot. It was basically 3/4 of the tire, right? The tire size, you go to basically 3/4. That's your safety zone. You go beyond that, you're working at optimization, and then you go past optimization or potential. Yeah. Now you're above your tires. Now you're in uncharted territory. Yep. Well, anyways, you as the driver are fully submerged.
Yes,
you are underwater
you better
yourself.
Have gear.
And I just I want to
think it was
jump.
Excessive.
It was excessive, and I want to jump forward. I don't know, about 75 years, and briefly mention Fred Williams' tube sock.
Yes,
and say we will talk about that.
Yeah,
and now I want to go back. And what capacity was that military vehicle in the late 40s ever subjected? In what terrain? How do you know what's on the bottom of this pond or lake or whatever? In tube sock situation, they knew exactly what was on the bottom of this pond.
Yeah,
they mapped that out.
They went in a pool, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember. It's something. But regardless, because actually, I think the first time he tried to do it in a pond, and he actually, the muck sunk down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And so he couldn't do it in the pond because this is the very conversation I'm having is, at what point in time are you going 6 feet 2 inches underwater and not being boulders, rocks, mud, muck, little shrubby, bushy things that want to drag you down?
Absolutely. So I figure, because I don't know the truth, I'm just going to make stuff up. This sounds good.
That's fair.
And so
Welcome
I
to
think
2026.
You just had one deep fording equipped Jeep in your unit, and you picked the guy that would just do anything for you to drive it, and you had him in the front of the pack. And when it just disappeared, you got another one later. And you didn't take the other Jeeps there.
Another GP or another Jeep. That's
whatever the requirement.
There were so many guys enlisted in the military at the time. We just, oh, God rest their souls.
But I don't imagine they had a surplus of these equipped Jeeps everywhere. Like I said, I'd be surprised if probably a couple per unit would be my guess, or something that they were expected to install this kit, which makes it even worse.
And I think this is a completely arbitrary, based on my feeling statement. At this point in time in my exposure to this world, we actually see quite a few fording kit equipped Jeeps.
Yeah,
I think it's because they never got used.
I bet you they all got surplused. The GIs, now that they're taking the shows, are excited.
Yep.
And it gets people's attention.
Because it's unique. When
the exhaust pipe is taller than your head.
Yes.
Then they get excited. And I do believe, obviously all the Jeeps were equipped to allow that fording kit to be installed. But if they were used in great use mass, please correct me, but I would be shocked.
Right. To see them still relevant to this day.
And mainly because they didn't stick with it. They yes, military vehicles are able to ford pretty deep, but I'd have never seen a Humvee where people with scuba gear is driving it,
right?
That kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't think this was I think we had swung the pendulum from just crap to 6 feet 2 inches, and they're like, okay, maybe
this is more of like a proof of concept.
Maybe we overreacted a little bit. Maybe we need to rein that back a touch.
All I can conceptualize is in almost every Hollywood movie, there's that moment where everybody's gearing up and they're in they're shoving the magazines in the rifles and putting 18 guns up their back and throwing some grenades on their belt, and then they go down under the water and they all rise up together, like a Navy team, know.
They're all SEALs,
right? They're all SEALs. It's always, Rambo always does this, right?
Yes.
At no point in time have we ever seen a Hummer in that scene.
Yes.
Right? At no point in time do we oh yeah, I expect to see the Hummer equally slowly come up out of the water.
Yeah. And they did keep this for the next model, the M38A1. I think it just had to, because it was basically the derivation of the first Jeep. They just put a CJ5 body on it.
Right.
And an F head. So they wanted it to swim too, just not L heads. F heads had to swim as well.
Yes.
But other than that, I mean, really don't think it went too far past that.
I would love to have a historian. I mean, an authentic historian out there,
Yes.
kind of weigh in some capacity and be like, this is when this skirmish was decided by a semi-aquatic
Yeah.
people mover Jeep.
We'd all be asleep though. So
Stop it. If they listen to us now, they probably
they probably are asleep. But anyway, so I'm kind of impressed with Jeep with consistency. After all that hoopla, they pretty much decided, you know what, 30 inches is pretty good. So, and obviously there's all of this disclaimers because it matters on your model. It matters on your equipment. So it's not one size fits most, even though this is like the word. But they do say like to the rocker panels, don't go past that.
I think they add all of that fluffed up language so that it gives them an out when it actually comes to warranty purposes.
Correct. I think the engineers are
Is what
like,
it is.
well, I can go to 30 inches, and the PR are like, shh,
Yeah, legal weighs in and goes, but
shut up.
yep.
So, and that's from basically everything after the A1 all the way up to JLs. Now, obviously, JLs, we broke the mold. And we had to do things differently because now we have different springs for different corners and we had all this extra stuff. So we're still 30 inches for like basic run-of-the-mill JLs. And then we also could be, depending on how it's optioned. So they're kind of flirting with the idea of Rubicon, but they're not really saying it. We're kind of 33.6. And then if you get one, Extreme Recon with the 35 stock, you can do 34 inches. So a whole 4 inches.
Man, and for a lot of folks out there, four inches is
important.
It's important.
Yeah,
And
it's not about how many 4 inches you have. It's how you use the
how
4
you
inches.
use those 4 inches. There's value in those 4 inches. That could be a game changer.
Yeah. And obviously, it's all general rule of thumb. And once you have utilized your 30 inches, you have a work list now. You have things you need. Well, you should do.
You should do.
Because like Neil was already alluding to, you have everything that can and will be in a puddle is now in your Jeep in very tight, intimate areas.
Yeah, and we're going to get into a little bit of that science and whatnot. And I do want to add piggyback off of what Scott is sharing, that with the advent of the 392, because airflow becomes hypercritical, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing. And if you've listened to much of what I've said before, when customers ask us to do V8 swaps, airflow becomes one of the things that we as a business have to be, highly conscientious about. Heating and cooling of that engine in an efficient manner becomes more important than ever. And of course, if you create a production value vehicle, the engineers at Jeep Chrysler equally have to prioritize that. It's a lot different than doing a V8 muscle car.
Yes.
As I had shared with Scott in the the lead up to this podcast, Jeep still does advertise their fording depths, and they do give us a generic number, which they know that we will push. But if you were to go to a Toyota dealership, as the example, a Toyota Camry, but
I would be nice a taco. They're not going to tell you.
They're not
what your TRD taco,
what your fording depth is.
Yeah.
And likewise, as a V8, car from Dodge, they're not going to tell you what your fording depth is for your V8, and they're not going to prioritize it. Whereas Jeep with the 392 Wrangler, they did at 32.5 inches, and in fact, it's so hypercritical for airflow. They actually designed its own proprietary intake, the Hydra Guide.
Yeah.
so that the V8 can continue to get the ample amount of air that it needs.
So you have enough America.
100%
Bald eagles.
in and out, airflow in and out of your air pump. And it has 4 water drains off of it, and it basically, even in the situation of a bow wake, which we'll get to a little bit in the process of fording and fording techniques.
Yep.
And if that wake was to kind of push into the hood, because it has a lifetime hood scoop,
Yes.
that you're good, that it's actually going to divert the water and allow fresh air in as your vehicle, kind of processes through the water over the hood.
And I cannot not talk about my father-in-law when we talk about fording, because while he was not a Jeep guy in this era of his life, he was a Bronco guy. Mm-hmm. He had a couple.
He was into cooler Broncos, old school stuff.
Yeah, it was a dent side Bronco. He bought brand new. But anyway, he spent a lot of time in rivers and streams and stuff. No, he didn't. EPA. Anyway,
Right.
It was the 70s. Things were rough.
I was gonna say it was a totally different world.
But he had a weird and fun concept because he had done so much of that. And talking about heating and cooling of your engine, his word was, if you dip the oil pan of the engine in the water, it runs a lot cooler. So all you got to do, your truck overheating, just get that oil pan in the water.
That was his thing.
That was his thing. That was his word. And about bow, he had a prescribed entrance into the water procedure. You can't do it with zest and zeal,
Right.
because then you overcome the vehicle with water. You had to go in nice and slow, and for that bow, and you had to pay attention to when it bounced off the offending shore and came back at you.
No,
How
that
much
was his
it would,
thing.
Oh, absolutely. He had a whole science for this.
Huh.
And he would go down to like truck nationals or any of that where they would go with water pits, and he would be the guy standing there. Well, he's doing that wrong because you see how fast he went in there, and look at that bow. And he was right. You could watch it happen. And he's like, he's going to stop right there. And they were dead.
And that was his thing.
Yeah, it was his thing because he had done it so much.
And and it's interesting because I genuinely feel like when we like the Harry Potter sorting hat of off-roaders,
Yeah.
you have a couple different groups, and actually we should probably do that as a podcast itself.
Absolutely.
And so I will not necessarily expand upon that concept because write that down. Somebody remind me at the end of the podcast. I want to talk about the Harry Potter sorting hat of off-roaders. You find yourself to be a person who does or doesn't like water.
Yes.
Right. And I really, really, really like water crossings, and we're very fortunate where kind of our geography, we're around glacially created waterways.
Yeah.
And that tends to give us kind of a slate or a hard rock waterbed.
Yeah.
That's a pretty even demeanor.
Yes.
So when
and
we're
where they were playing, it's all shale bottom, it's hard bottom. And they literally had a road when we were kids called the Ford.
Yeah.
That you drove across in the water. And if the water was rushing too much, you left the chat. You were downstream.
Well, and so it's valuable to take this moment and kind of expand upon that as part of our American history. And it wasn't just us, but we're fortunate enough to have this direct experience. I actually saw a post. And I saw a post just this weekend from somebody because the Ford is closed now.
Yes.
But back in the day, and some of our listeners from all over the country, and I would encourage you, I love hearing from you, so feel free to text us or shoot an email. Tell me where your space was. But we didn't build bridges.
Yeah.
If it was a creek bed or a river that had a seasonal ebb and flow,
Yep.
you would use that thoroughfare to cut through the hauler, to cut through the creek, because it shaved time. Maybe you didn't have to go 8 or 10 miles down the road one direction.
Yep.
When the water was low, they didn't build a bridge for purposes of civil engineering. They just had this crossing through a waterway, and it might have been a hard pack where they threw some concrete down at a low spot.
Yeah.
And then when there was a little bit of water, it was just 2 or 3 inches. You drove your station wagon through it. You drove your bias ply equipped rear wheel drive, Ford and Chevy of the 20s through the 50s.
Oh, and they literally, on my father-in-law, would go in somewhere downstream of the Ford and end up at the Ford. So that's the general area they were doing.
I
stuff
expected them down in the Gulf when you were talking about that.
Well, some of that happened too, but
So we had these spaces, and in fact, our listeners in Western Pennsylvania, a kind of famous one is the is in Tionessa is the Nebraska Bridge. The Nebraska Bridge is a super cool space, still open to the public seasonally, because this bridge actually will flood up to like 18 feet and it'll become completely impassable. And of course, it's so valuable for my PSA at this exact moment to say that flash flooding is a real thing.
Absolutely.
That traversing water ways, it can be against local environmental laws, and it can straight up be dangerous. So please be conscientious of how you play and how you recreate.
I mean, nothing's more fun than to have your underpass and it suddenly they get, chest to head deep and grandma to the side of the minivan is going to swim today.
Yeah.
That happens almost every spring around here.
Absolutely. And I think that you have to be very, very conscientious of how emboldened we are in our thoughts of the fact that this American spirit says we should be able to cross this body of water. I should not have to go 8 to 10 miles in either direction to go around it. Yeah. I will not be encumbered. I will move forward.
Yeah.
Which I think is that 74-inch conversation from that paltry 21 inches, you know, bigger is better. And I'm going to just put my head down and Jeep through it. And I do miss those. I do miss the Ford. I remember going down there after a heavy rain or a heavy melt and I don't know, challenging myself to drive through it, even though it probably really wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I remember being excited to drive through it. And of course I still do, as I started to elaborate on the fact that in our area, from Southington to Wellsville to Anthracite to Roush, they all have water crossings that are protected. Mm-hmm. Now, likewise, there is actually an ATV park within general proximity to us that had a riverway running through it, which people downstream did not appreciate the fact that this ATV park was doing water crossings.
Yeah.
And because of this uber rare salamander Western Pennsylvania thing, they eventually got that water crossing byway, they deemed illegal. Mm-hmm. And so I do believe there is a conversation around leave no trace and being respectful of our neighbors and how we do stuff. And there are challenges because, like, as you mentioned, the 70s, 80s, and arguably into the 90s, we just ramrodded our Jeeps and trucks wherever we wanted to.
Yes.
They weren't always hard bottom shale crossings. Sometimes they were mucky, murky bottoms, and we buried vehicles.
Yes.
My family farm, we had a pond on the property, and my cousin thought it was a good idea to take our three-wheeler out there and attempt to cross it. Well, that was like, I don't know, 16 to 18 inches of that soft muck at the bottom of it. And all he did was bury it about, he only got about 6 feet out, but the three-wheeler headed out into the pond and just buried itself.
Yep.
Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about what happened, if and how and when we did do that. But I remember before we get there, we went from fording kits. Mm-hmm. I remember reading through the Petersons and the JP Rags and kind of expanding my knowledge set that here we are in the 80s and 90s and we want to play in the water because, again, it was more culturally acceptable for just localized play. You weren't traveling to an off-road park.
And nobody, knows you're serious unless you have a snorkel attached to
Well,
the
we didn't
windshield.
quite have a snorkel just yet, right? We didn't have those snorkels yet, but we had the big air cleaners. Remember, we all used to flip the lids, so we,
Absolutely.
you had a little Hearst purrs and a little growl. So we had an exposed air filter element. You may or may not have had a good seat from your air cleaner assembly to the carburetor.
Oh, one more thing on that kind of note. My other father-in-law's big PSA was Jeeps and Fords are better at playing in the water than Chevys. You know why?
Oh, God. Why?
Because the fan grabs the water, throws it up against the bottom of the hood because you're moving forward. Momentum pushes it back. And if you have a Chevy, the distributor was in the back.
Yep.
So you immediately drowned your distributor. Where an AMC or a Ford,
They were at the forward of the
they were in the front.
Yep.
So the water just went over top of them, missing them. And
Your father-in-law would have that belief, wouldn't he?
absolutely. And therefore, big block Chryslers were okay. Small blocks were just as bad as a Chevy.
I just love, and I just don't think like somebody who's new to Jeeps, who's just joined us in the JK to JL world, has a full appreciation for that era of
Absolutely.
our 4x4 lifestyles. Because man, I remember those conversation arguments, because what you're alluding to is about where I'm about to lead with Peterson's and the JP Rag. You had to protect your distributor.
Yes.
It became this hyper critical situation to address spark plugs and distributor. There was conversations of using silicone, of some type of silicone to silicone your distributor.
Well, at
And-
minimum, you had to go find like an 80s to 90s Ford and steal a little rubber booty they had over the distributor cap.
Yes.
That was your first line of defense. If you were really serious, then you had to seal up your distributor.
You had to seal it up.
because they're vented from the factory.
Right.
So you had to throw the vents away and get out your tube RTV and just glue everything together.
Just glue it together.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I couldn't even begin to tell you where or how or what this was, but I remember this offhand comment. It's one of those things that was completely burnt into my brain. And it was like, in a worst case scenario, if you don't have access to a approved product like an RTV or some type of gasket making component, you can use hot glue and saran wrap. And I can't begin. I just remember being a teenager and being like, oh, I'm going to hot glue and saran wrap my distributor.
And you got to make sure you have WD-40 for when it doesn't work.
Absolutely. Right. So what an impeccable,
And of course,
experience that was.
we weren't worried about the oil from the, in the motor. We weren't worried about our oils in our diffs or into our transmission. And another fun story. I remember early on in my wheeling days, there was a guy, he had a TJ, and sadly it was an automatic, much to his sadness. And those era of pre-02 TJs, they had a Chrysler automatic, and the vent on those is behind the torque converter at the very top of the pump, which isn't very tall.
Okay. The transmission pump, oil pump, just so
Yeah.
everybody's listening.
Yeah, so we're talking kind of ish bottom of the oil pan is about where that vent is. And you can't easily make it higher. It is doable, but you have to have it apart and plug things and drill new holes and redirect things. It's involved.
Sure.
And he put 1 or 2 transmissions in that Jeep
Oof.
just because of following the stick shifts through the water.
Yes.
And they made it through, so therefore I should.
And I think as we continue to kind of build upon this conversation, then there's a couple ways that I want to go with this. I want to move into the JK and that experience. I want to go and I want to talk as well as far as what happens when we do take on water.
Yeah.
But one of the piece that I remember as a young person being exposed to it, when sitting around the club conversations or the campfires and people being like, really, can you do this? And it's like, okay, well, if the fluids and the combustion and the high pressure functions that are happening internally stay internal to the vehicle, then yes, you can subject the outside of it to fluid as well.
Yep.
If the insides are sealed so the insides don't become the outsides, then it's sealed from the outsides becoming the insides.
Yeah.
And only when we have those vents and other prolonged exposure does there become problems. I do want to kind of touch upon your father-in-law's experience where he was on the sidelines and he had done it enough and had enough appreciation and enough finite understanding of the process to say, here's a technique, right?
Yes.
And that was a thing more so than modern day. We don't talk about modern day fording techniques because it's less important.
Yes.
Because and as we move into this conversation about what happens when we do take on water and what our modern vehicles do offer us. But at that time, technique, because our technology wasn't as good, right?
Yeah.
That 21 to 30 inches became standard, but guys that kept pushing it to the 6 and guys and gals kept pushing it to the 6 foot standard. We had to have the priority of technique, and technique is still valuable. Engineers at Jeep, Chrysler, still talk about bow wake technology.
Yep.
And there is a speed at which you're supposed to
5 mile an hour or less.
correct. Yep. And that's valuable, folks, for listening at home. That is actually an engineered standard expectation.
Literally per Jeep.
And if you are in this, there was this bow wake technique, which is the idea that at this speed, I could keep the wave going over the hood or going past the Jeep. I would actually keep an air pocket in or under my hood space. And so my vehicle would continue to breathe so long as it was within this air pocket.
Well, and my father-in-law would say that you want that offending wake to hit you and you're in the middle of the crossing, so that you don't make a big wake. You allow the reverb off the other side. You come back, it hits you, and then the water drops. After the wake has passed you, the water level goes down, and then he said, you mat it. You give it back. Because now the water level has gone down, and now your time is basically before that other wake comes back for you, you should be across.
And there is a whole conversation on effective water crossing, and I don't think that today we're going to get into it. Today we're talking more on the tech side of things, the vehicle, and what it means to our Jeep history itself.
Yep.
There are a lot of great, I can't speak highly enough. There are a number of individuals from coast to coast who offer like 101, 102 and advanced courses.
Absolutely.
And that's a great place for you to do this. We all see the really cool videos where the Jeep like floats down river before it, mats it and runs up a hill. Yep. I don't recommend that for anybody, but this is a cool technique if you can learn it in a calculated risk environment. And as I mentioned, I love water crossings, and Southington and Anthracite and Wells all have it available to us.
And another thing my father-in-law would say, and we've experienced here, if you have gone out on a trail and you've flogged your Jeep pretty hard and everything's pretty warm, and then you go and you're like, oh, now I'm going to go to the water. The minute you dip that axle, that transmission, that engine into the water, just like he said, once the oil pan drops into the water, the motor cools off, so doesn't your axles. Now, that's a good thing, but
it could be a bad thing. And I want you to hold that thought.
Yep.
Okay. I want you to hold that thought because I want to take a moment and recognize a bunch of listeners because people have jumped in and said good morning in the process, all the comments. And so Billy Joe is sharing with us her first memories of crossing water was about age 4, crossing the high water in the Colorado after snow melt. Caution and common sense are definitely required. I've seen some videos of people attempting really fast water. We don't recommend that. That's certainly not what we're doing here. Charles says, good morning from Texas. Nathan says, Pittsburgh still has the duck boat. Joe says, Ducky Tours Pittsburgh, based out of Station Square. Like I said, I'm going to do it one of these days, folks. I just think it's so cool. I just haven't made a priority. Yvonne says, Jeep. Nick and Linda Perry, good morning. Nathan starts talking about tube sock. Bill McWilliams, good morning. Rob, the rails, they go the other way. They're definitely off the rails. I don't remember what he's talking about there. Nathan, the scuba tank. how big of a scuba tank would your Jeep need to keep running underwater? Geauga Jeepers used to drive the Golf in Ashtabula where the Ford was. That's what we were talking about. Nathan, not hard to drown his 254 cylinder.
No, it's not.
Jerry brings up a very good point for our comments. That's why I always encourage people to go check out there. E-fans were a very big deal at one time, and the older technology of an E-fan, the fan might kick on and have entirely too much resistance in the water itself.
And freak out.
You would want a bypass switch to override that fan. You'd shut it off, and I remember that being even our factory fans. There was a couple XJ hacks where you would go in and you could turn off the E-fan.
Yep.
And then Nathan, pulls like a cartoon-esque. If you go fast enough, you can drive on the surface. I don't think anybody's walking on water who's listening to this podcast.
We're not driving Volkswagens.
Well, with paddle tires. So good morning to all of you who've joined in the comments and shared. So, you started, you touched upon a little bit of thermodynamic properties.
Yes. So you have a hot axle, and you then dip it into a relatively cold water. And just like you do when you get in the pool from an 80-degree day and it is, 62 water, and you get in the water and you go,
yeah,
at least I do. Your axle does as well.
Yes.
And if your
transmission.
And if your vents aren't able to deal with that sudden inhale, it will pull water right past the seals, because the seals are designed for basically one-way travel. They're designed to keep oil in and relative smuts out, but water, that's kind of that's quite a bit. So that seal is designed purposely for kind of a one-way being harder to pass than the other. So basically, father-in-law's recommendation is if you go out and you dip your tires past the center of the hubs in the water, you better go home and change your diff oil. And anything likewise similar height, which is why, you obviously lifted your truck to the moon. So your engine and transmission transfer case weren't in the water.
That is actually the value of a high lift at that point.
Yep.
And I think that this is a concept that I think is lost on entirely too many people, but I do want to break down the science because I do enjoy it so much. And as far as the seals and whatnot, Scott's talking a lot about the breather aspects, right? Because ultimately, any of these systems that working systems, they create friction. So inside our differential, our axle bearings, our transmission, and it could be a fluid friction as well. But basically, the expansion of those fluids, the air space relative to the fluid has to go somewhere. It has to vent out. Likewise, as it cools naturally, it will pull in environmental or ambient air into the system and equalize. It's a basic property at which our radiator and our cooling system specifically works with our overflows.
Yep.
Most of you know to check your overflow when you have an open system, cooling system. Our JLJT owners now have a closed system, more reminiscent of our 80s XJ, MJ, so on and so forth, cooling systems. And that system being closed ebbs and flows and expands inside this plastic bottle, but that's where this venting process happens. It even has an environmental vent. Yep. PSC specifically played with this, and now they have a barometric one-way valve as part of their complete or comprehensive package. And that is something they added to their steering kits almost 10, 15 years after they were relative to the market.
Yep.
Understanding that their high pressure closed hydraulic systems actually needed some type of barometric venting, but they also needed to maintain barometric pressure. So there's a super cool kind of processy here. But big deal is the fact that we used to talk specifically, you brought up the automatic transmissions. Manual transmissions were largely sealed, and you could, within reason, subject them to some abuse. The clutch was not always faring so well in the water.
But you could get through it.
You could get it through it, whereas the automatic transmission, certainly the older guard, were a little more sensitive, and their vents weren't as robust.
Yeah.
So
most manuals in the early day, middle of the sandwich, the 70s and 80s, were basically vented from your shifter hole or relatively right behind that. So pretty much the top of the transmission. You had to be pretty deep.
You had to be pretty deep to kind of
your feet were wet.
Submerge that. Yeah, and that's the whole rocker. Best practices is the rockers.
Yeah.
And so then what ends up happening, right? As this becomes more and more prolific to do these water crossings, the idea was to then draw the vents up to the top of the firewall.
Do the M38. Bring everybody, got a vent, everybody come together, and we're going to pick a high point, which on the M38 was the air cleaner. Mm-hmm. There was like 11 bungs off the back of it for you to put all your vents to.
Yep.
And that was a thing, especially like you're bringing up JP back in the day. They would have like how you did that and what was the proper way to do it.
Right. How to tie your vents together, in what capacity, were you getting enough fresh air to and from those components so that when you did hit the cool water with these hot parts, they're able to both, basically burp the system effectively.
Yeah.
It was one of the criticisms when the rudimentary cold air intakes started to saturate the market. Now we had an exposed filter element. No longer was it kind of encapsulated in a box that the engineer had kind of painstakingly designed, but now we had this 360-degree cone that was just hanging out at the front of the engine. Think TJs specifically are what comes to mind. That it became very, very prevalent, and that exposed air filter element had the potentiality to become saturated in a less than ideal water crossing situation.
Yep.
So ultimately, I'm going to fast forward to the JK because this is what becomes highly relevant to me. It's basically 2016. We had a customer who picked up a leftover 2015. He got it on a smoking deal, and he came to us. We're a relatively young professional build business. We all had been doing stuff the side or kind of normal.
And listening to our forefathers on what they did or didn't do.
Right. And we have a customer who comes to us, and with the JK, snorkels became a fashion statement.
Yes.
Right? They were a thing in the TJs and for functional purposes.
How you know you're serious.
Yeah. It's how we knew you were serious. You had a snorkel and a winch for looks, right? Yes. But we had a customer come to us, and he said, I just bought this Jeep, and I want you to build me a submarine. Mm-hmm. And that was one of my first exposures with kind of this modern day interpretation. And there were some folks who were playing with this at that time. And we endeavored to do that for this customer. And he said, basically, I want to use every bit of the advertising forwarding process.
Yes.
He wanted to use the bow wake technique to get the water up to basically at his cowl.
Yep.
And he said he was going to go cowl deep, because he had experience, or he had memories from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, where they did water crossings.
Yep.
And he wanted to do it in his new modern day Jeep. And so we turned this brand new JK into a submarine, as far as I was concerned. And we had it all sealed up. We had, we had used gasket maker. We had used rubber gaskets, all the stuff. Now, at the same time, Fred Williams, in Dirt Every Day and something or other, there is this, he's playing with this concept of tube sock. And as I mentioned, the first attempt under the water, if I recall, was a huge failure.
Yeah.
Because he got stuck at the bottom of the pond. If I remember, I don't remember if he got stuck on a rock, if he got bogged down in the
went
mud
south.
like my uncle, or my cousin in the pond.
And he then set out to do it kind of like a MythBuster situation,
Yes.
where it didn't work in real world situation. Now what do we have to do to make it work? And that's when they actually went to a pool, if I
Yes.
remember right, because it was clean water, solid bottom.
He ended up putting on authentic scuba gear so that he could remain with the vehicle, or somebody put on scuba gear.
He removed all the interior but one seat. They went through and really purpose built tube sock for that one singular
Yes, experience.
situation.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun to see. And it's valuable to say that these air pumps of ours, so long as they've got air coming in and air going out,
Don't care.
they don't care. If they're sealed up from the inside, becoming the outsides, and the outsides can't become the insides. And that was a big concept for me as a kid. And that's exactly what they did. Now, I am going to kind of go a little bit of jumping back and forth. Back in the day, you didn't need to elongate your exhaust, because so long as
The motor didn't shut off.
the motor didn't shut off, you would continue to pump out the force of the exhaust, back pressure being a conversation that the forward pressure of the exhaust, or the exhausting pressure, was greater than water pressure depending on depth.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this gets into the science, which I nerd out on. The argument is, if in an emergency situation your engine shuts off, now
You're in trouble.
you're in trouble, because we have the same thermodynamic properties of that hot pipe. It's going to act like a straw with a revenge,
Yes.
and it's going to suck all the fluid in. Now, in Fred Williams' situation, they had I don't even remember, 9 to 12 foot tall pipes, both in intake and exhaust.
Yeah.
And the fording kits of the military, it equally elongated both.
That was above your head.
It was both intake and exhaust. And that air pump continued to, can vent ambiently appropriately. And I keep calling the engine an air pump, folks, if you haven't caught on to that. Because in this situation, it exemplifies exactly that concept. So the challenge is, I remember folks getting into water, and for whatever reason, the electronics geeking out, something happening, and now the water comes rushing in. Not even so much in the intake, but because it's coming back up in the exhaust ports. And of course, the exhaust ports right into the valve train, from the valve train right into the cylinder.
Bad things happen.
Bad things happen. So to round this conversation up to a degree, because we are encroaching upon that time, and we didn't even really talk about JLs and JTs, other than the fact that you can go, somewhere between 32 and 36 inches with your Jeep, kind of stockish.
Depending on equipment.
Those 4 inches do matter how you use them. So when you got water into your sensitive places,
Yes.
cast iron blocks were more forgiving.
Yes.
It was important that you didn't try to restart it when it was full of water or
Yes.
underwater. As soon as it shut off,
You're done.
You needed to be done.
You were now swimming.
And you needed to be, tugging that vehicle back to the shore.
Yes.
From there, you would pull the spark plugs, pull the wires, pull the plugs, pull the oil drain.
Drain the engine.
You're going to drain the engine of arguably every cavity possible.
And then the next oil you're going to put in is a sacrificial oil change.
And you're going to want to oil down your cylinder walls inside the engine itself.
If you like it.
Don't raw dog them. You want to oil them down a little bit, because that residual moisture exposed to the environment will become flash rust on those cylinder walls.
Yeah. So
and valves.
When you are doing your water up the stream in your Chevrolet truck in 1980, and it dies because the water has hit the fan and drowned the distributor, you had to call my father-in-law, because he had 250 foot of chain.
Yes.
And
And he was proud of that.
And he was proud of that. and you would swim the chain to him, and then recover him from the shore. And they may or may not have had the picture of that truck stuck in the middle of the water on the front page of the paper.
Okay. I love it. So, and I remember seeing these vehicles, they didn't hydrolock, right? They got to the point where they didn't hydrolock, and that's what you want to avoid is sensitive systems hydrolocking.
Yes, bad things happen.
Bad things happen because then internal components bend.
Uncle Rodney exits the chat.
He goes out the bay window that he just blew in the side of your block.
Yes.
So I remember seeing all the spark plugs removed, V8 and oil down the cylinders. At that point in time, they had already drained and refilled the oil. And now they hit the key. And I remember seeing water vapor, exiting the chat with
left.
I mean, with just a fervor coming out these cylinders. And it was cool to see, but not by any means ideal.
That first start after that's always a little rough.
It is. But relatively, you might actually be saved by the grace of the engine gods, once or so when this happens. Now, our modern day vehicles where we have multi-piece construction engines.
Yep.
And a high bimetal construction, meaning there's aluminum in there, there's steel in there, there's plastic in there, which we're teasing for a future podcast.
Yep. Things get more complicated. And chances for success go down a lot.
As a purveyor of wheeling at the Outer Banks and being off-road in a beach and oceanfront capacity, I've personally witnessed a Grand Cherokee be sacrificed to Mother Ocean.
Yeah. I've also seen a Grand Cherokee that tried to play where Wranglers were, and the mud line was at the windshield, and it no run no more.
This was not Rob Morgan's Grand Cherokee. Let's
No.
just all be on the same page. This was like this was just your run of the mill.
I got done at the grocery store, and I was like, you know what? I got 4-wheel drive.
Well, that's still Rob's Cherokee, just so we're on the same page.
Rob's modified his. The cutting
with a paint
wheel
job, and a bumper.
cutting wheel had come out
Yeah,
at
that's
some
true.
point.
All right.
So, and a little bit of know-how also. It goes a long way.
That's true.
The bow weight conversation.
Still a Grand Cherokee. Yeah. But, it's the insurance company deems it a total loss.
Yes.
Kind of right away. Boom. A total loss. So if you are a modern day vehicle, understanding that how we relate to these vehicles, the component construction, and kind of what we're dealing with.
I would say with personal experience, the newest vehicle I know of that got swamped pretty extensive and lived to tell the tale was a 3 JK.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it was an old school pushrod motor that, yes, there's some dissimilar metals in there. It wasn't happy after that. It definitely shortened its service life.
Yes.
But it did live to tell the tale. After that, I'd say you're pretty much, your goal is not to do that.
Yeah, and I guess this gets into a whole conversation about saltwater versus freshwater, which we haven't even expanded upon. The high electrical sensitivity of our modern day vehicles with again subjecting modules and computer control, wiring harnesses, certain plug kits. Again, everything is intended to be environmentally sealed to a degree.
Yes. With that said, too, though, when you play in this situation a lot, you do end up with corrosion in places that you don't expect. My father-in-law's Bronco is no longer with us.
For a reason.
For a reason. Rust was definitely an issue with that. And likewise, if you don't go in and clean out where things get, and we see that all the time because we're underneath Jeeps that have been wheeled, so we see straw or reed sticks, that kind of stuff from water.
Yes.
Sand in really crazy places. It hurts your brakes. It hurts your seals. Gear oil will turn into this paste mud that you got to clean out. there's a lot to it. You should go in and you should grease everything. You should dump fluids. You should power wash. You should remove wheels.
I think that that's a really valuable sentiment as we kind of bring this conversation to a close. It is all doable still by modern standards.
Yes.
You can do it, and I'm going to give kudos to where kudos belong, specifically for guys who are hardcore off-roaders, who I know have subjected their Jeeps to some really substantial beating. Chip Fury and a customer of ours, Dave Welch, both of them are customers of ours or were customers of ours. Those guys would almost disassemble their vehicle.
Yes.
And seeing pictures and having conversations with them,
they go into the obstacle knowing I just caused myself a bunch of work.
Yes.
And they were okay with that.
Well, and it's Rob Passander as well, and there's other customers too, but
Yeah.
they actually take solace or joy in the disassembly, the cleaning, the detailing process. Whereas for a lot of us, we want to go out and play, and then immediately we got to drive to work on Monday in the same vehicle or so. You know anything about that, Scott?
No. Nope.
And so for just a simple lack of priority or even evaluation of time,
Yeah.
we're unable to address the vehicle in such a way that allows it to do these.
So then
Depth
we
of water
pay the
crossing.
price at some point.
So then we pay the price.
Yeah.
And that's, your father-in-law was exactly that. He was a guy's guy who would go out there, he would push the limit, he would do the thing. He liked the recovery, he liked the club experience, but then he also just had to go to work on Monday.
Yep.
Like the vast majority of us.
Yep.
And that in itself becomes a little bit of the challenge when it comes to prolonging the lifespan of the vehicle. Are they capable of it? Absolutely. There's a great history with fording water and playing in situations that would have the average Camry owner shaking in their shoes. Absolutely. But prepare to do the work following. Drain your diff, drain your diffs, inspect your vents, make sure they're tied together to the best of ability.
Wash out your brakes.
Wash out your brakes.
Yep.
And understand that, for 10 minutes of fun, sometimes you have to do 10 hours of cleanup.
Absolutely.
There is a savage in the truest way possible in the production value, and I appreciate him for this. We do have to do an amendment or a correction to today's program.
Uh-oh.
And actually, the Toyota Tacoma Trail Hunter
Oh, geez.
does come with a snorkel and is rated for a fording depth of 35 inches. So we do
With a
apologize.
snorkel.
We do apologize, Toyota, if we've offended you by saying that we did not think the Taco would be advertised as fording.
So to get 35 inches, you have to have a snorkel on a Toyota?
Hey, you picked up on the right piece of information that I saw. Jeep World, we got 32 to 36 without a snorkel.
Yeah.
So I see you, Toyota.
Yeah.
Toyota, Ford, you're all just playing catch up. Just is what it is. I had a lot of fun with today's program. I hope you all did at home as well. If you want to contribute to the conversation, text us at 440-855-2100 or send us an email at contact, CONTACT, at sfj4x4.com. And we'd love to hear from you about some of your cool off-road wheeling, fording, water experiences. I certainly know we have.
Well, and did not.
Yeah, I like everything, and we always tell people, we've learned stuff the hard way, so that you don't have to. And maybe you can contribute to our viewers as well. We are going to be coming back in the future, talking about some tech, specifically plastic in modern day vehicles, good, bad, or otherwise. Until next time, Jeep on.
Jeep on. So this weekend, I got to put a radiator in my truck.
I don't know. I'm a little disappointed that I actually did that well enough. I really want the
Yeah.
noise.
No.
Oh, fine. Okay.
And also, that was kind of, it was a nice day. Wasn't actually that bad of a job. Definitely can see doing an all metal radiator would be a complete pain in the butt. Glad I went back with a factory style, and will continue to do so. But other than that, it was relatively easy. It's amazing how efficient our cooling systems on these modern day vehicles are. It's literally a core. So this tiny thin radiator, and I can just, the hot rodder in me was like, man, that's not good enough. Need like a 4-core radiator. And then I waited for it to get the operating temperature for the thermostat to open, and waited and waited and waited and waited, because it's just so efficient.
Right.
It just, I just did not get up to operating temperature very fast, and went up and then back down a couple times, and finally we were able to get up there, but relatively like half a gallon of coolant, all I lost. Was able to do it that way, so I was pretty happy overall with that process. Onto the T, I did work on making it more shored up. So the back of the body up to this point, you would like get a stiff breeze and it would flap at you and move all around.
Rough weekend for that.
So I was able to finally decide where I wanted to put supports, how to tie them into the original supports, exactly what I was going to do. I'm trying desperately not to do 1940s technology where we add, 20 pounds of steel for no reason.
Okay.
Because this is a light car, and the lighter it is, the more fun it will be with the paltry 120 horsepower that it has.
Massive flathead V8.
Yes. So
it'll look cool. It'll sound cool.
Absolutely. So I was able to figure that out and kind of get the back of the body finally where I'm happy with. Help the driver's door alignment even more so. I did rebuild the latch on the driver's door, and that is now latching as well. So I have 2 functional doors.
Ooh. Fancy.
And I was able also to fit up the trunk lid and realize just what a big pile of garbage it is. But one thing I thought was fun to just kind of show where we've come from. So on this car originally, you would, so you pulled it forward to open the door inside, or you push it back and that locks the door. And there's this little tab that kind of keys in so it does that. And that's
like
how,
an old CJ door.
Kind of. And there is no lock cylinder on the driver's side because you're supposed to exit and enter the vehicle at the curb. So you were parking on Main Avenue, you were parallel parking, you had to slide across the bench, get out the passenger door, and then you could lock it with the singular lock cylinder on the passenger door.
Get the heck out of here.
Then,
that's fun.
If you're lucky enough to have a trunk, which my coupe does, the key on this 100-year-old car was not the key that you use for the door and the ignition. It was an old school skeleton key.
No.
That went in and just released the latch. So I guess if you had anything you wanted to keep secure, you put it inside the car. The trunk, I mean, I think a bobby pin would got you into the trunk. No problem.
Right.
But I just think that's fun just to show how far we've gone.
Super cool.
That's all it has is just literally a hole for a skeleton key to go in the deck lid, and it would move the latch. So it's not going to have that anymore. I'm going to fix that with a handle or something. I'm not quite sure, but yeah. And there's one on eBay for $50.
A skeleton key?
For a Model T.
Huh?
Yeah, for the trunk. So that's...
Like you put it on there for $50?
No.
Okay, I was like, are you plugging your own eBay sale at the moment?
No, if it was like $3, I would have bought it because it's just cool. But $50, no.
Yeah.
I don't need that for the price of admission.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was super cool.
That is cool. I love that
really
kind of.
fun.
I love that kind of automotive history, man.
I also worked on the driver's side, bottom of the quarter, basically right behind the door. That 2-door sedan that lost its life to make my coupe live. I had saved the panels from that, welded that in. Ironically, it's 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch longer on a coupe there versus a 2-door sedan for some reason. I don't know. Same door, same cowl, 1/4 of an inch different in the wheel opening. But I'll fix that, and I got the other side to do yet. Just trying to work on making it more and more structurally sound so that things don't flap and fall off. So
I think that's fair and appropriate. Wow.
So
that's very cool. So for me this weekend, as always, we're going to squeeze 10 pounds into 5-pound sack. You know how we do.
Yep.
I thought was really fun. I saw kind of explained, and this is just kind of the quirky stuff that, within reason, my family prioritizes. It was Friday the 13th on Friday. It was then Pi Day on Saturday.
Yep.
And it was the Ides of March on Sunday.
Yep.
It was a pretty good kind of folklore inspired or I don't know, fun, socially emotional weekend for us as far as just finding joy in little things. So had to do. As always, my family, my kids stay very busy. So in and around the kid activities, where the Jeep life takes us, my wife and I are both, rarely shut our Jeeps off very long. And, so once again, my daughter was involved in a kind of a prolific dance opportunity, which took us, kind of into uncharted territory. But in that process, we celebrated Pi Day, which those of the people who are on my social page saw that. And then we went and
what was the pie of choice?
She got particularly excited over pecan. And I went for the, tried and true pumpkin just because it's kind of out of season. And either one of those just is a great gateway to my heart. My dad was always like an apple pie, like a straight up old school apple pie. And the place we were at had a cookie dough pie. And I really wanted to walk on the wild side and get that. But given the opportunity to have pumpkin and pecan out of season, I took it.
Yep.
And so we had a pie and coffee date basically. We ended up in 2 Jeeps. We converged on one location. And then from there we went hiking and got some outdoor space. And that was great. That was great. And I had to call you right away and be like, did you know this thing exists?
And I did not. I grew up in that area.
This is maybe 2 miles with crow flies from your old house.
I just couldn't believe it. I kept repeating it because I was like, really?
Yeah. And my sister called into attention that actually the property that my wife and I have built our homestead upon may actually have a competitively old tree on it,
that's cool.
Which I need to be more conscientious of.
Yep.
And there has been a couple people who have documented my tree over the decades. And I should be more appreciative, and maybe I should actually go look into this tree of my own.
Absolutely. Time to get the tape measure out.
Correct. And that's exactly what she was calling into contention because we went and visited one of arguably Ohio's oldest oak trees in the state of Ohio. Happens to be right here in Northeastern Ohio. We, again, Jeeps. My wife and I converged into 2 Jeeps, one location. And 18 feet in circumference, which I thought was really appropriate for Pi Day, right?
Absolutely.
I've found something. That's what I do, folks. My oddities, my expanse of finding information and being exposed to this stuff doesn't stop with Jeeps.
Not exactly weekend, but when I was broke down last week and you had to come to rescue me, that tree that we were beside must be about that age or older.
About that age or older, yeah.
Yeah, that was a big tree.
Scott and I did some flat towing last week just for funsies.
Had been a while.
Had been a while since we did some hillbilly shenanigans.
Might as well just let the Jeep, break down on the side of the road.
This was not one of our modern Jeeps. This was something else, just so we're on the same page.
It was appropriate for it.
It was appropriate. And then yesterday I was really tickled to get back into the weather, even despite the wind. Was opportunistic
yesterday was gorgeous.
Yeah, and it was great to get back involved in the homestead and start to find my tools as far as getting them back into kind of project mode from kind of winter storage and some other stuff. And
just in time for winter to come back.
Yeah, winter 2.0 to smack us upside the head. That's unfortunate. So anywho, folks, we have a lot of Jeeps to attend to. I've got estimates just absolutely piling up on my desk, and parts logistics in a kind of a challenging time of global proportion and getting stuff here in a timely fashion at a reasonable cost. So we have to attend to that as much as we would like to continue to just jabber with you. We got to get to work.
Yep. Jeep on.
Jeep on.